Hi, welcome to BNZ Connect Online. I'm Glenn Senior from the Small Business Company, and today I'm talking to Owen Scott from Concentrate. First, a bit of housekeeping. There's the Q&A on the right-hand side if you'd like to ask questions. There's a workbook link, which is a great resource, so you can download it now, fill it in, or you can use it after the webinar. We're also recording this webinar, so we'll send you a link, and it's also going to be used for BNZ promotional purposes. So I'd like to introduce and welcome Owen. We're very lucky to have him talk to us today and his expertise. I think one of the key things for me around being business to business is in the COVID world, it's really hard to get in touch with people. I know in my business, I've only got one client I've never met. I usually travel around the planet. So Owen, welcome. Could you give us a bit of an introduction to what you're going to talk about and how you can help us in this post-COVID world?
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. So just a little bit about myself as an introduction. So I'm the managing director of a marketing agency based in Christchurch called Concentrate. We primarily, specialise in the technology sector, so all our customers seem to be sort of software, electronics, and engineering. But, I think, customers are spread nationally. But the one thing that all our customers have in common is that all B2B, they're all a mix of exporters and domestic focused, and they're all trying to obviously grow their sales. And what we do for them is sort of like we're like their outsourced marketing department. And we do everything for them from, build websites through to implement technology for their sales teams through to, generating leads. So it's sort of through that experience of working in that industry that, I've got some discussion today.
Okay. So the topic is hunt for the sales unicorn. So what do you mean by a sales unicorn?
Yeah, well, I think probably the place to start is just if we sort of step back a bit and we talk about B2B sales and how Kiwi companies typically approach that. So most companies, they start out with the founder doing the selling. That's sort of when they're a small business, and then the next stage is we want to get a salesperson involved and we want to hire a salesperson. And what we always strive to do is we want the best we can get. We want the sales unicorn, and that's a person who, we're hiring that's really experienced. They have their own network. We want them to find prospects. We want to generate leads, nurture them, close deals. And, we're really after this amazing person, and then we set them up to fail in that we don't provide any sort of structure or lead generation around them. So if we have a look, I've got a chart here that looks at a study around comparing, really, I suppose, one aspect of B2B sales in New Zealand versus the USA. So this study was done, looking at Kiwi companies. And then, so this, what it's saying is, how do companies, or where do companies get their leads from? So lead, I mean by a sales lead is sort of like a company sort of interested in your products and services. So the main piece to have a look at here is really that indirect marketing, which is sort of saying marketing. So what it is New Zealand companies, we get our leads from referrals, which is people, coming to us. We do a bit of cold calling and a bit of telemarketing, and the big difference is when we compare our marketing piece to USA companies, is that USA companies, 80% of the companies are saying their prime source of leads is marketing. In New Zealand, only 40%, half of companies are saying they have a marketing function. So just to sort of summarize there, so in the USA, we've got a sales team and we've got a separate, group called marketing, and they're generating leads for the sales team. In New Zealand, we have the sales team, which is sort of comprising of sales unicorns trying to do everything themselves.
Okay. So is it like, if I go to conferences and exhibit offshore to try and get clients, doing that myself as compared to actually having a sales system or a marketing system to do it for me?
Totally. So
okay.
If we go to the next slide, where we sort of, I suppose I'm summarizing up that model, is down the bottom left is that sales unicorn trying to do everything themselves. So they're working in a very unstructured environment. They're flying overseas. They're meeting with people, cups of coffee, doing their own thing because they're reasonably experienced, and they have no lead support. It's basically, Glenn, hop on a plane, go to the USA, go to a trade show, see how you get on. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to move companies up to that top right where we can systemize it. We can have, lower cost people in terms of your sales teams, put a lot of structure around them, and really set them up for success. And the benefit is that your sales become much more efficient. The whole process, you can basically sell more with the same team. We actually really start, and companies start to scale.
So my problem, and a number of companies that I've talked to, their issue too is the fact we can't travel. We can't go to some of these high-end events. We go to conferences where all our customers will come in one spot. So what is some of the solutions in this when we can't travel?
Yeah, well, it's really the answer is digital. So we're trying to move a lot of and I'll go through some examples, really trying to move a lot of that, I suppose, sales process online. A good example is like, typically, salespeople are traveling the world, trying to meet people, engage with them, share thought leadership, solve problems, and we're trying to replicate that environment in a digital way.
Okay.
So I think if we sort of, if we go to the next slide around the pandemic, that, these lead sources are drying up. Traditionally people have done quite a high personalized, selling approach, B2B. We've gone overseas, we've gone to events, we've done in-market visits, and we really need to move that online so we can do a lot. It's not replacing salespeople, but we're trying to move as much as possible online to be digital, and so we can do it remotely.
And how are companies coping, do you know? New Zealand companies especially?
I think the interesting thing with the whole COVID is we have a lot of companies that are, obviously it's mixed, depends which industry and stuff in, but the customers that we work with, I think what they're being forced to make changes, particularly in this space, and move things digital, and they're having to be really brave, and it's a bit uncomfortable, but on reflection, they're starting to say, actually, we're not going back. We've taken a big leap forward to cope. It's a bit like this call today. Zoom's now part of our daily lives. It won't go away. We'll be doing Zoom calls now forever, COVID or not. So they're sort of embracing it.
Yeah, actually, one thing I found is that if I went on trips, I would see people once or twice a year. When now I can set up online meetings once or twice a month. So the frequency of actually meeting and engaging with customers is actually higher.
Yeah. They're sort of unintended consequences. When we're forced to make a change, we get a bit braver, because we're always sort of a bit comfortable. And then we actually find it actually was a change for the better in a lot of ways. Yeah. So what I've sort of, I suppose, done in the presentation, I've put together sort of 7 points to, I suppose, for companies to start thinking about this process of moving more digital, making the sales process more structured, etc. So I was just going to work through those now. And we can discuss them as we go. So if we go to the first one, which is really, I suppose it's a higher level thing. It's really trying to remove that dependence around the sales unicorn. So it's about saying, where can we get some leads for this salesperson? How can we systemize our approach? How can we move things more digital to become more efficient? And that's what we're sort of setting ourselves up as goals in terms of our sales team.
Okay.
So we go to the next one. So I suppose the next one's sort of saying, it's an example of doing that. So what we're doing is quite often in a sales process, if you think of, we sort of split a sales process up, as the first piece is sort of prospecting. We've got to find people that may be a good fit. Then we want to sort of qualify them, and then we want to, connect with them, etc. So what we can actually do is chop off the first part of that process, which is we call prospecting, and hire a junior salesperson to do that part of it. So what we're doing is, instead of the salesperson going overseas or going to Auckland or Christchurch and doing that really expensive sort of first prospecting bit just to basically meet people and find out whether they've got a problem you can solve, we actually have a lower cost person doing that and supplying the senior salesperson with really qualified sales leads. Okay,
so I've got an interesting question here. Somebody's asked about outsourcing. So should you have that internally, or should you outsource it? So there's a lot of contracting companies like in the Philippines and low cost countries. What's your advice on that?
There are definitely companies to outsource it, and obviously there's benefits. Outsourcing, there's nothing wrong with outsourcing it. I wouldn't outsource it to like a sort of a mass organization overseas. When we talk about outsourcing, there are some smaller personalized organisations in New Zealand and what they are, because this part still has to be part of your sales team. It's about your company personality and your company brand and the way you engage, and you just can't. This is not a robotic thing that you can they're not ringing. It's not a numbers game. It's to an extent that they're just making a whole lot of phone calls and seeing if someone will connect. It's a far more personalised approach.
Okay, and another question is, I guess, the difference between tech, personal selling. It's not just for tech businesses, right? Can you give an example maybe around personal services? Sorry.
Yeah, so it's not just for tech. It's for this is B2B. What you just find is tech tend to be sometimes adopt this stuff faster. But we have a lot of companies, say in the manufacturing sector, that are still doing this sort of making this fundamental change in their business, and they've carved off this part of their role.
So another question is around the use of a junior. So like in my business, if I'm dealing, I mainly need 10 clients a year. So therefore, should I be using a junior person to make that first point of contact when you're trying to establish trust? Is a junior more for where you got hundreds and thousands of customers? What's your advice around using a junior for your first point of contact?
No, not at all. So the junior can definitely do that, because what we're trying to do, the first part of it is just to find the person. Right. It's just to find a person, and they can use language. They're just focused on their role, and what they get excited about is finding people, qualifying them, and setting up a call with the senior person. Like you know what I mean? So it's actually, and they enjoy that role, and we actually remunerate them on the number of basic quality, we call them discovery sessions, that they set up for a senior salesperson.
Right, so it might be somebody going through LinkedIn or databases or searching through the net to find people, and then once they've found them, then the more senior person makes contact. Yep.
So like all that time, understanding who's on your website, reaching out to people, just trying to see, and it's really about establishing that first connection, doing some sort of qualification. Are they a good fit for you? Maybe some research into the company, etc. And it's a huge amount of time to do that.
Yep. Thank you.
That's right. So the next point is around, I suppose, changing to a more systemized approach. So if we look at most people's sales process, what we can do is start chopping it up, rather than just sort of this bucket called sales and the salesperson's doing their thing. We're going to try and chop it up into some stages. So, we might have a prospecting stage. We might have, in our sales process, we have a connecting stage, which is we're just trying to have a 15-minute connection, whether it's via email or via a quick call, just to establish that they're interested in, I suppose, in talking to us and they're a good fit. Then we have a bigger discovery phase, which is understanding the customer requirements. Then, maybe a solution stage where we build a solution and present it, then you get into, a proposal and then close. But we're trying to, there's two parts to this. We're trying to break the sales process up, and then we're trying to come up with criteria around, what does it mean? When do I know I've completed a stage? So in our discovery stage, we're trying to talk to customers to understand their budget. Do the person I'm talking to, do they have authority? Do they have a strong need that we can help them with? And, what's the timeline? So we're actually really honing it. So we've actually sort of put a lot of structure around our process.
Okay.
So the next bit is really, I suppose the next point is really cranking up that marketing function. So marketing in B2B companies has all sorts of roles. And I really just want to focus on one, which is the main one, which is marketing's role is to generate leads for sales teams and to make sales teams more efficient. And if you can get your sort of marketing function focused up on that, that's a sort of a key part of this. So I've got a diagram really that I suppose I'm trying to show all the moving parts of an online lead generation system. If we go to the next slide. And it looks a bit complicated, but at the hub of this is your website. So any digital system, we've got a hub is a website. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to use your website to, I suppose, replace that personal consultative selling that you do in a B2B sort of engagement over a long period of time. We're trying to put that information en masse onto your website and then telling people that it's there. So we're using social media and other digital channels just to really tell people that there's this amazing resource on your website, and then people come to your website and we use that to generate leads. So we're really trying to systemize this lead generation. The way I sort of like to think about this is, the B2B buyer, your customers, they've all gone online. They are researching and finding out, answers to their problems all the time. If you don't have information on your website to engage in that conversation, then they're on someone else's website. Yep. They're on your competitor's website. And so we need to have these systems set up.
So a customer wouldn't do all of these, right? Would you cherry pick which pieces are relevant to your targets?
Yeah, so what tends to happen is you sort of, you start out, there's a little bit of infrastructure, you might put a little technology platform, plugged into your website so that we can measure and deliver this really efficient. And then what you tend to do is just try a whole lot of tactics and then see what happens. Because one of the really benefits of going, digital is that everything's measurable. So it's sort of a different way of doing marketing. Like back in the 90s, we'd all sort of come up with these grand ideas. No one could measure anything. No one really knew, the answer was a billboard or TV advertising. Now it's digital, it's 100% measurable. So you try everything and see what works. So sometimes Facebook works, sometimes Twitter or whatever.
There's another question here about, how do you actually measure the impact of marketing on lead gen apart from web leads? What are the other indicators?
Well, I think the main measure is leads, but then other measures is just really looking at earlier things. So, if we're going to deliver a certain number of leads to sales, we need to have a certain number of people on our website. So it's just we call those sort of funnel metrics. So it's sort of like for a salesperson to close so many deals, we need so many leads, and then we need so many visits to the website. So there are other metrics, but the prime one is leads.
Okay.
That's what we're measured on.
What do you think about the number of virtual conferences that are being offered? So rather than physically turning up, you can actually subscribe and pay to go to a virtual conference. Do you think they're effective?
Yeah, well, the strange thing is I'm actually in a virtual conference today. So we use a software called HubSpot from the USA, and they have their massive conference, which normally has like 20 or 30,000 people at. It's on today.
Is it inbound, is it?
Yeah,
is it
inbound.
So, right. Okay.
Yeah, so it's sort of, and it's a really cool it's not too bad an experience. You go on into a website and you can sort of, participate. It's sort of, in some ways, the experience hasn't been so good for us here in New Zealand because of the time zone, because it's all in USA time. So actually we're just watching stuff pre-recorded, and so you sort of lose a bit of that experience. But yeah, I think they're going to be fantastic if they're just got to keep working on the technology, I think. So because that they can provide some of those other things we go to events for, which is about meeting people. Okay. It's not all about consuming, listening to presentations.
So I like this slide. So from my understanding, the website is the critical piece and it's in the middle.
Yep.
And then you're driving either through social or through thought leadership or publishing articles, or you're emailing people, or you're going through LinkedIn to find contacts. And maybe there's some offline stuff where you're promoting or advertising. And then as you drive people to the website, how are you converting them? Do you then have demo forms and contact us and download this? Like, what's the next process once people have come to the site, and what works in your opinion?
Yeah, so so basically we have the website, we've got a whole lot of information on the website, and then we're putting snippets of the information out into these channels where people are to bring them back to the website. The way we convert them for lead is most of the stuff is free. You can just download it, you can read it, but there's a bunch of stuff.
But there's that's not like you.
Yeah, well, but there's a bunch of stuff that you have to put in, maybe your email address to get, because it's a really, it's the ultimate guide to lead generation or something. Sure. And that's a wee sales transaction you do there. The biggest mistake people do is all the information they have on their website is all about them, all about your company and your products, and there's nothing around helping the customer understand the problems in their business, understand solutions that are available, all that research stuff you do before I get to you as a vendor.
Yeah.
And that's the real challenge for people.
I've got another good challenge for you. I've got a question about this company is an ice cream manufacturer. They get most of their sales by people tasting their ice cream. How do you squish ice cream through a website?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is, the whole context of this is B2B. So it's around, so it's not really a consumer type thing.
Oh, I think that they sell to. Sorry, they sell to other to
restaurants and
B2B.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So restaurants have all sorts of challenges. So they have challenges around, obviously, everything from recipes, how to make meals in a cost-effective way, how to hire and retrain staff and stuff. So there's a whole lot of, it's just trying to find, if we just broaden the problem space from ice cream to, delivering a great experience for a punter in a restaurant through food, there's a whole lot of thought leadership maybe that you could provide them, and advice and recipe guides, and how to get the cost of your, how do you price, actually how do you come up with the price of the, the dish that you're delivering the customer, etc. So you put some material on that.
I assume there's other web assets people could create, so like videos or testimonials.
Yep. So
and I assume people can still order and get tasting, like you can actually ship tastings, right?
Yep. So it's all about, the way to think of it is how could we make our website so cool that people come back to it 6 or 8 times in the next, year? So they're coming back to it, they bookmark it, and it's a resource. So could we have some calculators that you put in and work out some numbers? I could do my costings around my recipes. Is there some recipe generator? Is there, some, so it's videos, it's books, it's calculators, it's webinars, it's checklists, it's, guides. It's all of that sort of information around the problem space.
Okay. Had a few questions coming up around the software that people should use. There's 2 or 3 here, so that is a good intro to the next slide, I think.
Yeah, so I think what we need to do is, we call it sales enablement and technology, but so there's 2 parts here. We need to invest in, we invest as businesses in technology right across the business, particularly, like a manufacturing company will invest heavily, but we don't invest in technology for our sales team. And the sort of thing we're talking about there is, obviously we need a CRM, which is it's a computer system where we're going to hold all information around a customer. It's meeting links, so we can, rather than this, if I want to meet with you, I got to send you, hey, how about Wednesday at 10 o'clock? And you say, no, I'm not available. I'm available Thursday at 5 o'clock. And they'll go, oh, I'm not available. And we do this tit for tat. There's just little tools I can say, here's a view of my calendar. Can you book something? Obviously Zoom is a fantastic, product. There's systems now, you do a call and your call will be transcribed, into text for you. Or we can make little Loom videos. Loom, L-O-O-M, you can do a little video and I could pre-record it and send it to you in an email. So there's lots of tools that we could use to actually invest in our sales team.
So you mentioned HubSpot before, so do you want to cover how that works?
Yeah, so if we go to the next slide, so HubSpot sort of in the New Zealand B2B market, New Zealand's, is basically the leading technology platform for sales and marketing teams. So this is just a view of their CRM system where we're recording, everything about our customers, from a profile of who they are as a business, all the characteristics around their size, etc. We're recording behavior around, how's this person interacting with our website and our marketing activity and our sales activity, and we're recording all the sales actions. So we're really pulling together a single view of all the sales and marketing activity for a particular person or company.
Because there's been a few questions around, what CRM software we should use, and so you're recommending HubSpot, and you mentioned that they've got a good free version people can use.
Yeah, so I've probably used 6 or 7 CRMs in anger in my life, and HubSpot's the first one that I describe as the first one I've really used. Rather than sort of compliance and being told to put stuff in a CRM, this is one I use in my day job, and it's been fantastic. The product, what is great is there's a really strong free version, and then you can go up to like a $50 version, and then up to a system that would support a really large company in New Zealand. So what it does is it enables you to sort of do a platform choice and grow with it, rather than sort of picking, because there's lots of free tools, and then as soon as you start to scale, you've got to move off that tool and onto something bigger. HubSpot,
Okay.
you can go the whole journey.
Okay. One of the questions around good content. So to get this set up properly, and also systemizing, I guess, so playbooks, or what's your advice around getting access to good content?
Do you mean in terms of for the salesperson, or for
I think on the website? On the website, yeah. So how do you create thought leadership? How do you create these pieces of content?
Yeah, so the thought leadership needs to come from the company that's selling the product. They're the experts in the domain, etc. But there's lots of ways of doing it. So, for example, we produce content for our customers, and we do that by interviewing. But you'd be surprised what content you have lying around in the cupboards in a business. That they went to a trade show last year and they actually may have done a presentation, or they put together a proposal. And in that proposal they've sort of provided some material. So I think there's lots of ways. There's just the place to start is taking an audit of what you've got.
Yeah.
I mean, what I'm sort of talking about here, and this point about agreeing and documenting everything, this is sort of really focused on a sales playbook for the sales people, the sales team. So what we mean by that is, quite often in a sales team we say, what's a good lead? And they've all got a very clear answer, but none of the answers are the same. In a business,
okay.
What's a company that suits you? And so we need to document the stuff down, and then we get a really common understanding of it.
Okay, got a couple of quick fire questions for you in 10-15 seconds. What's a good balance for a junior salesperson between commission and base salaries?
Yep, I'd be, so normally we'd do quite a high proportion of commission, so you'd probably do like 60% base and 40% commission, or even more. Okay. And it's a really focused role.
Okay. So next question: if you only have 2 or 3 sales a year, then should you go light on digital and heavy on networking?
Well, it sort of depends, because to get your 2 or 3 sales, how many companies do you actually need to talk to and sure. and work? And the other thing is, sometimes companies that they sell $1 million product to one company, but they buy, they use a big team internally to buy products. So you might have to engage with 20 people in an organization to actually sell your one product.
Sure. Okay, yeah, makes sense. If people do want advice around a CRM, should they speak to a consultant? Should they search online? What's the best way to get help of which one to use?
Well, I think it's the same, as all products. You find most people, they'll go online to sort of, I suppose, get their head around, the language, the concept, what is there, and then you could talk to a consultant around, I suppose, trying to get some advice around, probably a bit more about how do I get going, how do I choose, etc. Give me some case studies of who's done really well with it in the past.
Okay, thank you. And so lastly, follow the numbers, just to conclude.
Yeah, so that's just really, it's like everything in a business. You've got to have some numbers that you can report against and measure your performance, and you need that for your sales team and your marketing team, and you need to measure that on a weekly basis.
Okay, so any final points, Owen, for people?
No, I think it's just like, there's quite a stuff we went through today, a bit of a list, but if we just step back a bit, what we're trying to do is look at how we can replace a big chunk of that personalized sort of unicorn selling, hopping on planes, going to trade shows, with a digital system and a more systemized technology based approach, not to replace everything, but to make that salesperson so much more efficient.
Okay. Hey, look, I really want to thank you for your time. I think, that the key for businesses that from a distance, which we are, is really working smarter. And I know for me, trying to use the technology to uncover clients and customers is a way better way of working than although business class is fine, but not at the moment. Obviously, we're not going anywhere. Look, I thank everyone for attending. We will have a follow-up email to you, which will have the recording, which BNZ will also use for promotional purposes. There is a great ebook which you can download from the chat, and we'll also send that to you. It's a comprehensive resource that Owen has kindly put together. Thanks again for coming. We appreciate your time, and we'll catch you at the next webinar.